Maybe I'm not pretty, maybe I'm just fine, 'cause I got a belly.
Hello and welcome. That's my newest attempt at trying to figure out how to have a fun and exciting hello opening. We're still working on it. Today's book was one of 3 potential options. The other 2 will happen. The first one didn't happen because I haven't written it down yet. The second one didn't happen because I didn't really care for it, and I didn't really want to take that much time to go over it. So here we are. It is Jemima J by Jane Green, and you know what? Let's also do this one just because I actually enjoyed it. It was written and published in the late 90s, and it's been a while since I've read it, which is a trend. I like to reread things. I like to see how I feel about them, and I'm so happy to report that I still like Jemima J. Jemima J is about this woman named Jemima who is very overweight and her desire to be thin. I'm relatively confused as to how overweight she actually was, because the book, written by a British author, takes place in England. So Jemima states that she is a size 14, or at least that the majority of the women in England are a 14. So I'm like, all right, I know 14 is a different size to a US size, but even then, if Jemima is 5'9", the pictures that I Googled, I think is US 18, US 16 or 18 is the equivalent of a UK 14. And at Jemima's height, she would not be as heavy as we are led to believe. So I think I just don't quite understand how heavy she actually is, because she consistently talks about her double chins and how she is the size of a whale. And I don't think this is an instance of I am not as heavy as I think I am. I think this really is a true reflection of her weight, because the changes that she makes are so drastic. So that was my biggest confusion. Honestly, by a certain point, it didn't really matter, but it did throw me off, because in my head, I've always thought of her as like morbidly obese almost. And then to have the idea that she's actually only size 14. So I think she wasn't a size 14. She must have been more. But that's all on that, and we're going to jump into the book. We meet Jemima, who works for the Kilburn Herald. She's a journalist, but not really a journalist. She does their top tips, so she's the person who calls because somebody writes in and says, I can't get cat stains out of my carpet, what do I do? So she's a very talented writer, but the editor at this paper will not let her move up to features, and largely she knows it's because of how she looks. She works there, and she has this massive crush on this guy named Ben Williams, and he's the shining star of this paper. He is their deputy editor. Ben wants bigger things for himself. And then on the other side, we also have this woman named Geraldine, who is kind of like their top feature writer, and she's everything that Jemima wants to be. And they are actually relatively friendly, she and Geraldine, and even she and Ben. Obviously, there's not much to it because it's kind of just in passing, but these are kind of the 2 characters that we get a lot of, and they are not antagonists, but Jemima is head over heels in love with Ben, but obviously she's like, it will never happen. She lives with these 2 girls named Sophie and Lisa, who are pretty vapid, although maybe they're not. They're not necessarily friends. Sophie and Lisa are friends. Jemima is just renting out a room in their flat. They like the fact that she's overweight. They feel bad for her, but like they like the fact that she's not competition. But they also don't think much of her because of her weight. It's this whole thing. They're secretaries at some kind of a firm, and so she says they're actually nice girls. They're not mean girls, they're nice girls, but they seem pretty vapid to me. Their whole mission in life is just to meet a rich man, and they've already gone through all the men at the agency, and they're now working through the clientele. We do also have Jemima's mom, who her dad had left when she was really small, and this seems to be the impetus for her weight, where the only way that she could self-soothe was to eat. And her mother used to be very thin and beautiful, and then obviously after she has Jemima, and then after her husband leaves, she starts to gain all this weight. And she kind of projects onto Jemima, and she makes Jemima feel bad. And she's always talking about how she's in this weight loss group, and oh, look at what we've done. But then when Jemima has things to report, she's like, oh, well, so she likes to put Jemima down. So she has a very turbulent relationship with her mother, but it's not actually a big deal to the novel. But to know there's a lot of things that go into her weight. We open up and Jemima just is not happy with herself. She is obsessed with the models in what she calls the glossy magazines. She would love to work for a glossy magazine, but she knows it will never happen. However, she does have Geraldine, who has her rewrite her copy, and it's kind of like the best kept secret or the worst kept secret that everybody knows that Jemima writes Geraldine's copy. But anyways, the whole book starts when the Kilburn Herald gets the internet. So if you really want a throwback novel, read Jemima J. It's a nostalgia factor for sure. And I will say Jemima's weight loss journey does start later than I remembered, but we get this whole build up, this whole backstory. And interestingly enough, this book is written in two perspectives. One is like a third person omniscient narrator, and then first person Jemima. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this because I don't remember picking up on this in my past reads, but this time I was just like, oh, so we're going back and forth between Jemima and this omniscient narrator. But I really enjoyed the omniscient narrator. She was real snarky, and she added a lot of flavor to this novel, and she gave us a lot of information that we couldn't have gotten otherwise by being first person close with Jemima. Was it all necessary? No, but it was flavor. And this book, it was really fun, really fast, really easy. We have the internet, and this entire staff has a mandatory meeting to attend in order to learn how to use the internet. Jemima is absolutely fascinated by the internet. Ben is also absolutely fascinated by the internet. However, Geraldine, whether she actually knows any of it or not, it's like, oh, I already know this. That was one of the most boring things I've ever experienced in my life. Ben and Jemima kind of bond over this fascination with the internet. And this sort of starts things rolling for Jemima. Because as I said, she's obsessed with her weight. She's obsessed with being skinny. She's obsessed with models. And in that, she's always saying, I'll be better tomorrow. I will start my diet tomorrow. And she never does. She makes all of those excuses, all that kind of stuff. But after this class, in a sense, I think it's because she's lonely. And so she finally has this opportunity to not be lonely, to hang out with people. And so she forgets to go by her regular schedule. This continues on throughout the novel, where she doesn't do things the way she usually does. And by changing that habit, it changes all of her habits. By having drinks with Ben and Geraldine after this computer class, the entire trajectory of her life changes. One night, she and Ben are still at the office, and they're screwing around, and he's like, let's look at a XXX website. She's like, I can't believe, like, no, we really should. And he's like, yeah, in the name of research. So they do, and of course, Geraldine comes up on them, and she's like, what's happening? And she shuts all that down. She's like, look, we don't need to be there. We need to do something really interesting. So how about we go to an internet cafe? And guys, this is such a throwback for me. So that's what they do, is they find an internet cafe, and there's all these people on there, and they start chatting up with this one dude, because obviously it's two girls and a guy, so they're chatting up with him, and they're like, oh, gross, this dude is so gross. And Ben's like, well, now it's my turn. So he starts chatting up with this other girl, and Geraldine and Jemima are like, we're out of here, you have fun. Amongst all of this, Ben is looking for a new job. He wants to be in television, and he does discover an opportunity in the newspaper at some point, and it's for just a new program with London Nights. And he quickly gets things together, but he hasn't quite set it off yet because he's not sure if it's ready, but he doesn't know who necessarily to talk to about it. Meanwhile, with our omniscient narrator, we have a scene where Jemima and Ben are kind of crossing paths, and Jemima stops off at a bookstore that Ben is at, and she decides one of the books she's gonna buy is going to be this book about basically the internet for dummies. She's just having this really great evening all by herself, kind of living in a dream world because she's still high off the fumes of all of her interactions with Ben and Geraldine. And then she sees Ben in a pub with another girl, and she kind of comes back down to earth. But this leads to another night where she's late at the office and she's just kind of bored. And she remembers that she has that internet book, that Internet for Dummies book in her bag. So she pulls it out and she's poking around and she's like, I really didn't need this. This is all kind of stupid. Let's go back to that internet cafe. So she logs in, and a guy who had actually been there the first time, Brad from Santa Monica, because the cafe is called LA Cafe. So Brad from Santa Monica starts chatting her up, and she lies about herself to him. She picks and chooses things, basically modeling her life after Geraldine's, because what's the harm? Don't we all know that's what catfishing's all about? She's never gonna meet him. She's in London, he's in California. Who's gonna be the wiser? They start chatting and connecting, and they agree, hey, let's continue to do this. Over time, Brad brings up this idea of her coming to California, and she's like, hold on. No. Because not only has she lied to him, but Geraldine is now in on the mix. And Geraldine is quite a nice character, but she loves, in a way, to stir up trouble, like to enable, not stir up trouble. She likes to enable, and she loves this idea that Jemima has met this dude, even though Jemima's lying about everything. He sends her a picture, and he's this gorgeous California hunk. He owns a gym over Santa Monica. He does very well for himself. So he wants a picture, and again, all of this just throws me back. Geraldine takes a stock photo of Jemima, brings it to their video guy, who's apparently a genius, and this is way before Photoshop, so I'm intrigued by how he's able to accomplish this, but I'm not going to doubt the process. I'm enjoying the book. And he makes her look like a bombshell. They are both stunned. They're like, how in the world could this actually be Jemima? And then Jemima sees it. She's like, how in the world can this actually be me? They send the picture on, and he's like, hubba hubba, hearts in my eyes. We really need to meet. But as I said, Jemima's like, this is not the picture I sent you. So that's not happening, but yeah, I'll think about it. As I said, Ben has this job opportunity in his back pocket. He and Jemima were gonna go to real internet cafe, like a place where people used to go to use computers and be on the internet. Things come up and they're unable to go, but he's like, I have to work late, but perhaps after I'm done, we can still meet up. This then leads to him showing up at her flat, and her roommates, who have heard about Ben, but of course don't think he's anywhere near as gorgeous as Jemima would describe, because why would he? She's Jemima. Like, why would she actually have her eyes set on somebody so unattainable, somebody in their league? They're all getting ready to go out, and Ben shows up, and they're like, who's this hunka burnin' love? They make it their mission to then go find Ben and Jemima. Thankfully, Jemima sees them and makes sure they don't see her and Ben, so they leave and do whatever they're gonna do. But it's while she and Ben are at this pub that he brings out this article, and he shows her the cover letter that he has written, and she's like, dude, this is such a snooze fest. You're not going to get seen. So she rewrites it, and she gives him the encouragement that he needs in order to move forward with this. He gets seen, but because of our omniscient narrator, we learned that if it hadn't been basically for the Diana McPherson who's in charge, for her personal secretary, Ben never would have been seen. But because he was smart enough to address it directly to her, to Diana McPherson, it landed in the secretary's pile, and then because the secretary pulled out his picture, that's all he needed. And we learned that this has gotten Ben through a lot of doors. He comes from a wealthy family, but he's kind of eschewed the wealth. He's trying to pave his own way, but his face has definitely gotten him places that he might not otherwise have gotten to. Not to say he wasn't qualified, and not to say he couldn't have done the job, but he got a leg up, and because he has a pretty face. It doesn't take a genius to know Ben gets the job. It's not exactly the job he wanted. He wants to do politics and really worthwhile stories, but Diana says, this guy, he's got a better face than that, so he's kind of in charge of pop culture and celebrity news, but that is neither here nor there. But the fact of the matter is, yes, he is going to take this job. A couple months has passed since Brad brought up the idea of her coming to California, and she decides, you know what, I'm gonna do something about it. So she goes and joins a gym, buys all this expensive workout equipment, and commits. She's not necessarily doing it in the healthiest way because her intake is not as great as her outtake, and she does have a personal trainer of sorts who is keeping an eye on her and who has recommended a healthy diet and dining plan for her to be adhering to as she's working out. But of course, her cravings, her desire to eat have gone down, have dissipated, which I find very interesting. And I tried to not really put too much thought into, because this is not a deep book by any means. I mean, the overall message is learn to love your own self and who you are. We don't get necessarily the most accurate depiction of what it's like to be extremely overweight and losing that weight. Jemima makes it look super easy. So by the time that Ben has gotten the job and they are preparing for his going away party, it's been about 3 months, and she has lost a significant amount of weight. Is she still rather large? Yes, but she has lost 20, 30, 40 pounds, something like that. So after he leaves, they lose touch. It's just the nature of the beast, and she knew this was going to happen. It upsets her, makes her sad, but it is what it is. And without Ben, she and Geraldine do grow closer. She and Brad start to grow closer as well. And then she does end up agreeing to come to California to stay with him for 2 weeks. So now by this point, so her goal, Geraldine is a size 8. Her goal is to be a size 8, which in the US is like a size 2 or 4. Now, when she's like a week out, 2 weeks out from going to visit Brad, she's actually even less than that. She might even be a UK size 6. She's not bought a new wardrobe. She hasn't really done anything to change her appearance except for lose weight. And Geraldine, who is this very glamorous woman, is like, look, we gotta fix you up a little bit. Takes her to the salon, takes her to get some new clothes, and she is an absolute bombshell. And of course, she's having a little bit of trouble coming to terms with the fact that she's getting all this attention, because she's also recognizing, because the editor at the Kilburn Herald had pulled her aside and said, hey, I think it's time that we promote you. And she 100% recognizes the fact that he's only doing this because of her weight loss. And she knows that the attention that she's gotten from her male coworkers and possibly even other coworkers is because of her weight loss. None of these people would have put any effort into her before, but now they're like, let's make some time for you. So she's looking her best. She gets to California, and Brad is even more gorgeous in person than he was on paper. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of sparks. And this was something Jemima, who actually, she calls herself JJ now. She introduced herself to Brad as JJ. And so this is her new persona. So Jemima was the morbidly obese woman, and JJ is this fit, tan, sexy woman. She had, just from the very beginning, kind of thought of him as bland, but he was hot, and she enjoyed talking to him, and besides, Ben wasn't around anymore, so they kept it up. Even though they don't have a lot of emotional chemistry, yeah, she definitely sleeps with him on that first day, and they have a lot of physical chemistry from then on. I gotta say, there was a moment, so she gets to town, she goes to the guest room, she takes her bath, and she's like, hey, can I make a phone call? He says, absolutely. So she calls Geraldine. We pull away to the omniscient narrator, who lets us know that he has been listening in on the other end of the line, and he's like pumping his fist because of the things that Jemima had to say about him. That was kind of creepy to me. And then the narrator goes on to explain about this lavish meal that he's making for Jemima. But don't be fooled. Brad can't actually cook. He has like 5 meals in his back pocket, and he pulls them out whenever he needs to, but he has to be very careful because he has to make sure that he doesn't cook the same meal twice for the same girl, and he does entertain quite often. Brad, I did feel, was kind of flat. He was a very one-dimensional character. He had a purpose, and he would go on to serve that purpose, but I thought it was just a strange moment in time where he's painted as somebody that we should perhaps be worried about or even scared of, and that maybe Jemima is in over her head and she doesn't know it. In the end, he is absolutely harmless, although he does have a secret. But we're not going to talk about Brad's secret yet. What we will talk about is Jenny. And Jenny is Brad's personal assistant at the gym, and Jenny is very overweight. Jemima looks at Jenny and sees herself, and she feels so bad for Jenny because she knows what it must be like, especially for Jenny to be working at this gym surrounded, and this lingo, I loved it, by all these hard bodies. And so she felt so bad for Jenny, and she wanted to be friends with Jenny, but Jenny was so antagonistic towards her. And I would say Jenny, not the villain, but Jenny is definitely the antagonist in this novel, if not the antagonist being how Jemima views herself and what it means to have self-worth. We're rolling along, and Jemima's bored because Brad, even though she's here for him, he has made no time for her. She ends up going to this little restaurant and meets this girl named Lauren, who, wouldn't you know it, is also from Kilburn, and she had also followed her American dreamboat to the States. Turns out, though, she had chosen not to sleep with him before she moved out here to be with him, and now that they have slept together, yeah, it's just not gonna work. We're not gonna get into that. But she and Lauren have a lot in common because apparently Lauren also works in journalism, and she works for some glossy magazine in the United States. So they bond, they're having a great time, but Brad is suspicious. He's like, who are you spending all this time with? And she says, it's the girl I met. She's just my friend. So we have all of that going on, and literally, like, there's not much to it. I'm not really glancing over much. It is a passing mention. We are about halfway through the novel now, and we are catching up a little bit with Ben. Because our narrator is telling us that he has kind of forgotten about Jemima and Geraldine in his past life, but how could he not? Because he has this glamorous new job, and he is something of a minor celebrity, and there's this big opportunity for him. Well, before that, he is in a pseudo relationship with Diana. She is a boss lady who likes to get her way, and what she really likes is a young, attractive man, even though she's in her 40s and kind of hard-faced, but she's a woman of power. She knows what she wants. She goes for what she wants. She gets what she wants. At some point, she does get Ben to sleep with her, but he automatically regrets it. But now she's, for some reason, breaking totally out of character and deciding, I can see a future for myself with this man and having a family. And this was another missed opportunity. I don't really know why we needed to have this whole cougar situation when it didn't have a major part in the story. Like, we had a lot of opportunities to have some pretty deep storylines, and they didn't get very deep at all. Like, maybe 1 or 2 digs in the dirt. I can understand it because this is not supposed to be a really heavy book, but for me, I don't understand why we're cracking open a door to a really interesting storyline when we're not going to open it all the way. But Ben is trying to stay out of Diana's way. Diana brings this story to him. There's an American actress that nobody gets to interview. There was an opportunity to interview her, and she was giving them the runaround. She'd seen a picture of Ben, and she was like, the only way I will do this interview is if he interviews me. So finally, they nailed down the particulars. But what it means is that Ben and some of the crew has to go to LA. So now Ben is like, oh, my old friend Jemima. He learns that she's in LA, and he's like, well, maybe we'll connect when I'm in LA. He gets there, and this actress and her crew gives him the runaround. I don't really understand. All I know is they sit in her living room for a very, very long time. She finally enters. Ben is interviewing her. He has the stars in his eyes until he starts to talk to her, and he learns more about her, and he realizes they are not compatible. Interview is over. He declines the invitation to hang out more, and of course his guys are like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, it just wasn't meant to be. Obviously, the real point of them coming to America was not to interview her, but it was just to have a good old time. So the guys are like, yeah, we really want to have a good time, but most of us just want to go to this English pub. We're gonna pause here and go back to Jemima. Brad has finally made a day for her. They have this great day, but then it's back to business as usual, and she's kind of upset. She's in his room, and she's drinking a Diet Coke, which you know she's upset because she's drinking a Diet Coke, and she accidentally spills this Coke all over his sheets. Apparently, he's pretty OCD, and she knows he's going to be really ticked when he finds out that she made a mess. She's trying to find the sheets, and she just can't do it. So she calls the gym. She's like, hey, can you ask him where his extra sheets are? And they're like, yeah, we'll give him the message. She's continuing to look. He gets the message and is freaking out. By this time, she's on the phone with Lauren, and they're chatting it up because Lauren has met this new dude who could possibly be the new love of her life. So Brad can't get through to her. He starts freaking out, and he gets into his car and he races to his house. We'll pause here a moment to say Ben is trying to cross the sidewalk when Brad races past. So we have a lot of these like near misses, all these kind of very surface level connections between characters. And Ben has actually seen Jemima. He doesn't know it's her, but he has seen this gorgeous woman, and he's like, wow, I wish they made women like that in the UK. So Brad is racing to his house, and Jemima, she finds the sheets, and something falls out with the sheets. Wouldn't you know what it is? Can anybody guess? Probably not, because I haven't gone super thorough and in depth with this. It's big woman porn. This whole time, Jemima has worked her absolute hardest to lose an entire person for this guy who owns a gym, has a banging body of his own, and seems to only care about women that look like her, just to find out he has a large woman fetish. Which, I mean, the irony of ironies, right? But of course we have to bring it back to who Jemima was, and was she happy with who she was? Like, does she even like who she is? But the worst part is not that he has a stash of large woman porn, but he has naked photos of Jenny on his bed. So, yeah, turns around, Brad's in the doorway. And who's right behind Brad? Jenny. Because Jenny somehow caught on the fact that he was super upset. So she decides to, well, not caught on the fact, but Jenny, recognizing he's very upset, decides to follow him home. I guess the message could have been passed on that it was a call from JJ. But yeah, we're not going to dive into that. And apparently they're in love. They had gone to high school together, but he'd been the big man on campus. He had very little to do with her. However, he had always been kind to her. He'd stick up for her when people make fun of her. She had the biggest crush on him, the way JJ did with Ben. And she just knew he was the one for her. Of course, they graduate, they go their separate ways. She ends up working with this overweight woman who turns out to be Brad's mother. She tells Jenny that Brad is going to open up this gym, and Jenny's like, let me just shoot my shot. She moves to LA to apply for a job with Brad. So like, she doesn't even have this job, but she moves to LA in the hopes that he will hire her. And he does. Apparently there had been a party. He had taken her home, and the alcohol made things a little easier to pursue than maybe they would have otherwise. But now we know why Brad was always so kind to her, because he had an overweight woman in his own life. Would I have liked more? Absolutely, because we are looking at a mirror image of JJ and what she thought she could never have. And I got irritated here, because she is like, how could you do this to me? They are not really, especially Jenny. JJ had brought it up to Brad how antagonistic Jenny was towards her. He wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't do anything about it. He wouldn't face the reality of it, which I was like, if we are trying to pretend like we are dating her, why aren't we doing something to at least make it look like we're trying to make things better? He and Jenny are in love, but they can't be together because he can't be with someone who looks like Jenny. They all know, for his image's sake, for the image of his gym, he has to be with someone like Jemima. Sorry, I can never tell which way my hair goes. Jenny is just going to continue to let him sleep around with other women while they're together because it's good for his ego and his image. Thankfully, Jemima is smart enough to be like, I deserve better than that. You deserve better than that. And whether or not you care, I'm getting out of here. I thought this was, again, such a really nice moment for us to dive into something here, but we just keep going past it because that's just how it's supposed to be. But I was just like, who's Brad? I still liked the book, but I was like, what in the ever-loving what did I just step into? So she gets the heck out of Dodge, and she goes to live with Lauren. Well, you know, the unfortunate part about all of this is Brad had told her he loved her. So she, never having been in a relationship, and even though she had her reservations, she was like, but he wants me, had decided to prolong her stay. So she went from being there 2 weeks to being there 3 months. All she did was she paid an extra $100 to change her plane ticket. She's good to go. Yeah, but now she has nowhere to live and she has no sugar daddy. She tries to get her plane ticket changed back and it's like almost £1,000, and she's like, I don't have that much money in the bank, because apparently she has spent almost every cent she's ever made on her transformation, on her gym membership, on these new clothes, on this plane ticket to the United States. And so she's like, I'm absolutely broke. There's no way I can go home, but you know what? I obviously can't stay here either. Lauren says, you stay on my couch, and here's my plan. And me, as the reader, as Beth, am thinking, I still want some answers to some of these propositions she makes, because they're actually really good suggestions. Her first one, because her boss had said, yeah, okay, you can stay 3 months, but what I want you to do is basically write this California column, like what it's like to be amongst the rich and famous, and you just send me your copy every week or whatever. And she only sent him one, and then I guess she stopped. and I don't exactly know, I feel like this is like a 2-week period, so maybe it's not as serious as it seems, but it seems like her editor is getting kind of irritated with her for not sending in the work that she promised to send him. And for somebody who's so worried about making money, I'm just shocked that she didn't make it more of a priority. So Lauren says, hey, look, on top of that, I will get you articles, features that you can write to contribute to my magazine. But you know what? You've got a really great story here. I think if we pitched it to the British Cosmo, you could really have something. Do we hear anything about her following through with any of this? No. All we know is that Jemima backslides, and she goes to this mall and she absolutely gorges herself on food. Blah, 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 blah. Seems like she's kind of breaking her diet a little, breaking her workout routine some. But this is about the time that Ben has come to LA. He has Brad's number, so he's trying to call her, and obviously they're not together anymore, so he can't reach her. So the night that his guys want to go out to that British pub, his main cameraman or the production guy or whatever says, I want to go to this restaurant. So they end up going to the British pub, and then he and the other guy go to that restaurant, and that is also where Lauren and Jemima are. And Jemima thinks she sees him, but she's like, there's no way. Absolutely no way. And she knows the success that he has achieved. Geraldine has sent over articles, and so now Ben is actually on her mind more than he had been in the past. Lauren is going on a date, and she looks at Jemima and she says, hey, do you remember that scarf you were wearing? And Jemima's like, you mean my favorite scarf? She goes, yeah. Can I borrow that for my date? Jemima agrees, but then realizes she doesn't have the scarf because it's still at Brad's. Lauren calls Brad and he says, yeah, absolutely, I've got it, but I've got a message for Jemima, or for JJ. Oh my gosh, Ben has been trying to get in touch with you. So they're all excited. Jemima calls Ben, they arrange to meet. As I've said, he has spotted her, so he spotted her once at the bookstore, and then actually on the night that she and Brad broke up, he spotted her in the phone booth when she was crying, calling Lauren. Now they are meeting up at this restaurant, and he gets there, or she gets there a little early. So when he gets there, he sees her. And because he's got this, he's also got a lot of confidence. He's like, I know I'm meeting Jemima, but that's the girl. So he goes over to talk to her, and she's like, oh my gosh, he knows it's me. And then obviously he doesn't know it's her. And she's so flabbergasted, so kind of taken aback and stunned, that she just leaves. She doesn't tell him who she is. And then she calls him up, she's like, dude, I'm so sorry. Something came up, like, can we meet again? So he only has one more night. They agree to meet up, and this time she decides she's gonna be a little bit late because she doesn't want to be sitting there when he walks in. She wants to be able to walk in and see him and approach him. So she does. And of course, he's blown away because he's like, oh, this is fate, this girl. I keep seeing her everywhere. And she starts laughing, and he's like, what's so funny? She's like, I'm Jemima, you doofus. They have this really great evening. They connect, and her crush at the very beginning, when she and Ben and Geraldine had been hanging out more, her crush bloomed into more than just a crush. She was like, I really have feelings for this person. And then he had gone from, passing acquaintance to a lot of respect for her, but obviously because of the way she looked, there was no entertaining of any ideas. But now, which I feel like he does seem a little superficial in this instance, but they have this really great evening together. He's starting to develop feelings for her as well. They sleep together. They have this really wonderful night. But it is time for him to go. So they wake up and, there's knocking on the door, and he's like, oh my gosh, I gotta go. So she writes her info on a piece of paper. He gets out of there. She goes back to Lawrence and she's like, I'm in love, I'm in love. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely amazing. And she waits. And she waits and she waits and she waits. And he never calls. A week goes by and he never calls. Well, wouldn't you know it, he lost that piece of paper with her information on it. So now he's panicking because he doesn't know how to get in touch with her. Obviously, she's not going to be at Brad's. She hasn't called Geraldine in a minute. And I'm like, why not? If you and Geraldine are so close, why doesn't Geraldine know about any of this? It's been a couple days, if not a week. Anywho, Jemima does finally call Geraldine. And Geraldine is like, where have you been? Ben called. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, he lost your number, you idiot. So now Jemima's like, oh my gosh, all is right with the world again. But what Geraldine does is, so Ben, when Jemima told Ben about her situation, he's like, why don't you just go home? And she doesn't want to admit to him that she can't afford it. So Geraldine gets into the center of this and, unbeknownst to Jemima, tells Ben about what's going on. Ben, also in this span of time, is being interviewed. And of course, Diana and all the people around him are like, hey, don't give away too much. He ends up talking about his relationships, and Geraldine sends a clipping of this to Jemima. Jemima opens it up, and in it, Ben declares his love for her. Whether or not he actually thinks she's going to see it, I don't know. But Jemima's like, oh my gosh, hearts in my eyes. But not only is the clipping in this envelope, but there's also a plane ticket that Ben has paid for. Jemima flies home. The plan is for her to live with Geraldine because her room has already been rented out to somebody else. And then we have our epilogue. In our epilogue, Ben and Jemima have gotten married. He has already been pursuing another job, even though he's only been in London Nights for like a year. And then she is saying, well, like, I can do better than the Kilburn Herald. So apparently she is now at her glossy magazine. He is succeeding in his new venture. And this cracks me up because I don't think I quite understand UK sizes. She goes from being what I'm pretty sure is like a size 20, if not higher, to a size 8, UK size 8. Or technically smaller. And in the epilogue, it's like Jemima Jones is no longer a stick thin. She is now a nice curvy size 10. And I'm like, size 10 is basically only one size up from a size 8. Please explain that. Please make that make sense. I mean, I'm sure because she lost more weight than was healthy for her height. So I am sure that going a pant size up was good for her. It looked fine on her. But I really want to know what Green meant when she's like, she's a nice curvy size 10. When she was slightly smaller than an 8, she was like too thin. I really would like to know, because actually, let me look it up. She doesn't actually say she's a size 14. She just says that approximately half the women in the country are a size 14, so she would hope that we would understand her secret binges and constant cravings. Then, when she begins this weight loss journey, when she gets to the gym the first time, she's at 204 pounds. However, because of her break with tradition, she had actually been 217. So 2 weeks prior, or however many weeks prior, she was 217. She's lost 13 pounds, starting weight at 204. She's 5'7", not 5'9". But he tells her that her goal weight should be 140. Her goal weight is 120. And in the last month of just working out, which if only it were that easy, she's 182. So she has lost, what, 40 pounds-ish? And then when she goes to visit Brad, she is 121. Which means that when she tries on her size 12 thinking that will be enough, it is not enough. Which, again, I can't believe that somebody so obsessed with weight would think that at 121 she'd wear a size 12. But no, she is actually a better fit for a size 8 or, possibly smaller. So then when she, we end and we get to our epilogue and she's a size 10, I'm like, to me, that's just not a big difference. I recommend Jemima J. It's just a fun novel. I hope you enjoy this one, and I'll see you around. Bye.